This is Talk Sports Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham, and we've got lots and lots to discuss. And what better opportunity to discuss lots and lots of different things than to have Mr. Mike Porky Parry here, who is joining me for the first time this week. He'll be back, of course, on Thursday night as well. A very, very exciting weekend of sport to discuss, Mike. Not least the amazing victory, or not, by Manchester City against Spurs, and not least the Merseyside derby which you attended.
Absolutely. I'll just raise my boxing cup first. I brought it in to show tonight.
You don't need to do any bicep measurements to actually lift that cup. It's about the size of an egg cup.
Well, I was only 6 when I won it. I won it at Butlins Filey, and I beat up some Welsh kid to...
What are you doing fighting at the age of 6? I mean, what sort of parents did you have? I mean, that is an appalling thing. I've got a 6-year-old son. The idea of putting him in a boxing ring is tantamount to child abuse, isn't it?
The gloves are almost bigger than me, but that's for later. Mike, you started the show, and by the way, great to be here with you again, Mike.
Fantastic.
Thank you for accommodating me in your studio. You've raised 2 very important points. The Merseyside derby, we should have won it. We're 3-2 up with a minute to go. It was, felt like a defeat afterwards.
I bet it did, yeah.
And, I need to balance up the situation regarding Kevin Morales and Luis Suarez. Now, millions of people have said after that game and seeing Match of the Day and reading it on the Sunday morning papers, well, if it had been the other way around, Suarez would have gone off.
Yeah.
Well, of course he would, because Suarez has got history for that sort of thing, and Morales hasn't. Morales is a Belgian, and Belgian people don't do that sort of thing.
Really?
They're
Fellaini's a Belgian as well, isn't he? Didn't he elbow Medel before Medel slapped him?
I was about to say he was the victim. He got slapped in the face in the area.
Some people are suggesting that he elbowed him before that happened.
I doubt that very much. I've never seen him elbow anybody.
What are you saying, that Belgians are pacifists or something?
Well, they've always been pacifists. They're a pacifist nation, and therefore Morales didn't do it with any deliberate intent. I mean...
Oh, come off it. He was firing in at him like a kung fu kick.
It was definitely a foul because it was misjudged, but it wasn't
Suarez
intent.
Was about 8 feet tall, it might have hurt him on the shins. But it made him bleed, for heaven's sake. He was actually drew blood.
As I said, it was a mistimed tackle, but it wasn't intentional. And Morales said that, and I believe him. But Belgian people are very honest people. I'm not saying that Luis Suarez is dishonest for one moment. But
so you're making some sweeping statement about Uruguayans and Belgians?
Not at all. Not at all. I will not pass judgment on the honesty or dishonesty of Uruguayan people, because I don't know too many Uruguayan people. I have been to Uruguay, to Montevideo, but I was only there for a couple of days. So
every time I hear that word Montevideo, I always think of Alan Brazil trying to pronounce it, making clips of the week. But listen, but hang on. The point is that, as many people have pointed out on Twitter tonight, Luis Suarez was responsible for putting Morales out of the team for about depending on which fan you listen to, anything from 2 to 8 weeks last season. He stepped on his foot.
I think it's about a month.
Yeah,
it was about a month. But
doesn't that give him motive then?
No. There was no sort of history between these two. There was no score settling. No, yes, but I mean malicious history. There was nothing like that, score settling or anything like that. So that's got that one out of the way. What was the other one you mentioned?
Well, Wayne Rooney should have been red carded, surely.
Well, Wayne Rooney should have gone off without a shadow of a doubt. And the point is, nobody seems to have actually focused on the fact that Wayne Rooney, it wasn't even a foul. It was,
he just kicked the guy.
The clattering of an opponent was exactly similar to what happened in the Montenegro game, which led to his World Cup ban.
Yeah, the only difference was he was running a bit faster.
He was running a bit faster, but you can tell now that what happens is the Roon suddenly gets the red mist and descends down his face, and when he gets dispossessed, which he doesn't like, because on both occasions he was dispossessed.
Yeah.
And he clearly doesn't like that. It never used to happen to him at school. At school, nobody ever took the ball off him. He was a force of nature, and that sort of thing. And that's happened for most of his career. So he gets the ball taken off him, and then he just literally sees red and goes mad. And goes and literally swings so aggressively, he could have taken the man's leg off.
Yeah.
So yes, of course he should have gone off. And all the information coming through tonight is that nothing's going to be done about that now.
Well, that's the thing that astonishes me, because if the panel has been... I mean, the rules have now been changed relatively recently, right? So that instead of just looking at incidents which the referee has not seen, they're now looking at incidents the referee did see, whether partially or not. And I know it starts to get a bit complicated when we start to explain this, but stay with me. I won't use any big words. But the bottom line is, right...
Oh, no, I'll stay with you, because for once, you've got a technical aspect of football right. Just for once, I'll stay with you.
Yeah, well, I've actually read about this just for a change, so I know what the rules are.
Does help.
And apparently, now that they can look at this incident and disregard the fact that it was already seen by the referee, already punished by the referee with the yellow card, they could have given him a red card, but they chose not to. And that baffles me. Why bother changing the system if you're not going to bother doing anything about it?
Yeah, well, it's become a whole mystery, isn't it? And you're absolutely right to start the debate tonight about the Mike Riley situation. And again, on Mike Riley, what nobody's actually mentioned yet is that Steve Clarke is partly the villain in that one.
Yeah.
Because Steve Clarke's made it public, and I can't believe for a moment that's the first time that the referee's boss, because before Mike Riley it was Hackett, wasn't it? I can't believe for a moment that that's the first time that a referee's boss has actually spoke to a manager on Monday morning and expressed some, regret for a decision that was made.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's one thing to say, I'm going to ring you and make an explanation. I mean, like we were talking earlier to Dermot Gallagher, and he said it's good that there's a dialogue between referees and Premier League
managers.
But
there won't be now.
But, well, not only shouldn't there be, there should be dialogue, but there shouldn't be apologies. What's the point of apologising for something that you have no way of actually fixing?
I totally agree, but do you think Mike Riley now is going to spend his Monday morning ringing up managers who've been in charge of teams involved in controversial decisions to give them the benefit of expressing their opinion? I don't think so. Because Steve Clarke, as far as I'm concerned, has closed down the communication channel between referees and managers because he's breached
But I think you're being a bit unfair on Steve Clarke.
Allegedly breached
you're being a bit unfair on Steve Clarke, because it may not have been Steve Clarke that decided to put it on the West Brom website. It may well have been somebody else that decided to make that public.
I think Steve Clarke first revealed, didn't he, that he'd had a phone call from Mike Riley.
There are those who say that it wasn't really down to him. I mean, I don't really know the answer to that. I don't think you're a million miles away from the truth there. I think as ever, the seeker of truth has got somewhere near it, but maybe not quite on it. Because of course, what happened on Saturday night after that Sunderland game, or Sunday night, was Gus Poyet comes on Match of the Day and goes, well, I'd like to get an apology. I'd like to be the first foreign manager. He sort of, as a Uruguayan, he just stuck that in there, didn't he? And said, I'd like to be the first foreign manager to get an apology from Mike Riley. Well, I bet he hasn't got one.
Yeah, and as you quite rightly pointed out earlier, half a dozen other managers inside and outside the Premiership could be asking, because I didn't realise actually Mike Riley's in charge of all the referees for all 92 teams, Premiership and Football League.
Yeah.
I thought he was just the top echelon.
If he's going to bring everybody up, he's going to be very busy.
He can be very busy indeed. And there could be a lot of managers wanting a lot of explanations and apologies from last weekend.
Now, a couple of questions for you about the Merseyside derby.
Okay.
Because as you know, you and I were talking last Thursday night about our predictions for the weekend. I seem to remember you said that Everton would win the game.
Well,
I said it would be a draw. And of course it was a draw.
But it was only a draw in the last minute because...
Well, it doesn't matter when it was a draw.
For the third time in 90 minutes, Everton weren't able to control a dead ball situation, and what do you call it? It's not a dead ball situation. What am I looking at here?
Set piece.
Set piece, thank you. That's exactly what I meant. I didn't mean dead ball. Although the ball is dead from a set piece. Obviously,
as well.
It was dead ball as well, thank you, well done for backing me up there. So, it was very frustrating. And do you know what, Mike? I was sitting right in line with Steven Gerrard's back, and I saw him running towards the ball. He took it quickly. Oh, yeah, it's way up in the gods, don't worry.
Because normally I see you sitting behind Bill Kenwright, because I was looking for you on Match of the Day.
That's where it is.
But I saw him, I didn't see you.
No, I wasn't immediately behind Mr. Kenwright. I was a few rows back in my own seat, in my own box, okay. And I saw...
Get back in your box, literally.
Back in your box, Porky, yeah. and I saw Gerrard go towards it, and I saw him leaning to the left, which meant he was going to sweep it over, you could tell from his body language. And I said, oh no, please, he's going to take a quick one.
And nobody was on Sturridge at all.
Nobody was on Sturridge at all. The minute I saw Sturridge go up like a salmon...
I knew you were going to say that.
And the flick of his... What?
Everybody says that in football, don't they? He rose like a salmon. It's such a tired old cliche phrase.
Leap like a salmon, I think is the expression.
Well, they say rose like a salmon, leap like a salmon. It's actually nothing like a salmon. Salmon don't leap straight up. They leap in a northerly direction, don't they?
Rubbish.
They do. They leap long ways.
Salmon? Have you never seen grizzly bear catching salmon in their mouth when they leap out of rivers?
No, have you?
No.
Was that when you were in Uruguay or Paraguay or Chile or perhaps Alaska?
No.
Yeah, but the salmon are not jumping straight up. The salmon jump longitudinally, I think you'll find.
Well,
they have to go up the stream. If they just jumped straight up, they'd stay where they were.
All right, well, I'll tell you, it was like watching a porpoise, or a dolphin, because they leap like that. I've seen them leap like that.
No, they also leap in a forward
direction.
No, they
don't. No,
I've seen leap straight up unless they're in a circus.
I've seen a dolphin in Cornwall leaping out of the water like that.
Well, straight
almost up. Yeah, almost leapt onto my boat. Could almost have caught it,
to be honest.
What were
you doing on a boat in Cornwall?
Well, I was on a...
Pleasure cruise?
No, on a rib, a rigid inflatable boat.
Why?
I went out walrus watching, or seal watching, whatever it is, And
you're not going to see many walruses off the coast of Cornwall.
Yeah, you do, and seals, and all these dolphins arrived. It was near Mousehole. You remember Mousehole?
Mousehole.
Tragically, is a village...
the place that got engulfed with water.
Well, no, it's also synonymous with the loss of 9 lifeboat men in a terrible accident some 25 years ago. So, but that's how it was. But anyway, look, we digress. Point is, Everton very nearly did win it. And funny enough, tonight's game, Villa West Brom, I spoke to my mate Glyn the Baggy after the game, and he said, he feels like I do. We had
Surely not that bad.
Sorry?
Surely it doesn't feel that bad.
I'll ignore that. He said, we thought we were in for a famous victory, and it turned out, bang, we only got a draw.
Now, I'm very
like
pleased. I'm also very pleased to know that you're not bitter about Stephen Gerrard, because Stephen Gerrard, some would say, going back to refereeing, there was a bit of an elbowing incident, wasn't there? What did you make of that?
I'm not over aware of that, and it wasn't being talked about at Goodison. Nobody seemed to think it was, a terrible, because, in fact, the elbow didn't connect. He
was kind of out, wasn't it? It was out.
Yeah, but it didn't. And actually, when somebody started explaining to me, I said, well, it didn't connect. I know. Well, what are we talking about it for? We're getting awfully sensitive, aren't we, about physical contact in football?
This is why
I think it's about time we all, sort of manned up a bit about it.
Well, this is why I think they've got to take care of all of these situations on the field of play, as I said to you before, every 90, for a 90-minute period of the game. There's not really a lot of point in cancelling out West Brown's red card, because he didn't get to play for the rest of the game. Sunderland didn't get any advantage. All they get is, well, he doesn't get banned. It's not very fair, really, is it?
That is the problem. A couple of seasons ago, Jack Rodwell was sent off.
Yeah, I remember him. He used to be quite a good player before he went to Manchester City.
He was, actually, before Everton sold him, and he couldn't fit into another team. But what I was going to say was, he got sent off very early on in an Everton-Liverpool game at Goodison, which we then subsequently lost. And later, the red card was rescinded. But it still meant that Everton played 73 minutes with 10 men.
Yeah.
So how do you make that up to Everton?
Can't.
How do you make that up to an Everton team? Do you say, right, well, in that case, you're going to have to replay the game again, because Everton were at such a disadvantage for 73 minutes, unfairly, because the red card was rescinded. So I agree with you. How do you make these things up?
It's astonishing. Mike Parry's agreed with me for the first time, I think, in his entire life, but it's because I'm talking so much sense. We're going to be talking some more sense coming up very, very shortly. We're going to be hearing from a stress expert on what the problem could be for Jonathan Trott, and obviously he's done the right thing by removing himself from the Ashes tour. We'll be talking about Mike Parry's boxing prowess as well. Coming up next on TalkSport. This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham, and of course I'm with Mr. Mike Porky Parry, the seeker of truth and justice. We're surrounded by newspapers this morning, Mike, with headlines like Ashes on fire. It's all about what's been going on down under, of course, in the first Ashes test. Anderson accused of threatening to punch Bailey. Trotz quits tour with stress-related illness. Flower seething at Warner's attack on English batsman. Tortured is what it says on the back page of the Daily Mail. Basically, Jonathan Trott has said he couldn't play on with the illness that he's got. It's stress-related, it's depression-related. It's terribly sad for him.
Is it depression? I mean, from the very start... It's
very difficult to know, isn't it?
From the very start, Andy Flower said, with a stress-related illness. There's always a debate about, the definition of depression, and the problem is these days, depression has become such the focal point of health experts. We then delve into bipolar. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it becomes a very complicated subject. So I
think in the end, all you can really say about it is that if somebody in the sporting context anyway, because that's what we're talking about here, feels that they are unwell, mentally unprepared, then you can only take their word for that.
I'm totally sympathetic.
And you can't in any way question it. Really.
I'm totally sympathetic. This guy's standing there at the crease, his balls are whizzing past his head. If he feels he's unable to literally face up to them or defend himself because mentally he's not able to adjust, his brain to the sporting mechanism it needs to cope with that, then of course he's got to do something about it and leave. So wholly sympathetic to it. Be nice if we talk to an expert to find out exactly what it is that grips people like that and suddenly, renders them as incapable as if they'd broken their leg.
Well, fortunately, we have just that expert with us. It's Dr. Kerry Mummery, who's going to join us now, and who can tell us about what the real hot sort of white-hot heat of something like an Ashes test and how that affects individual athletes. Dr. Mummery, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Not at all. I mean, Jonathan Trott is a top-class cricketer. He's faced many kind of punishing regimens. He's faced many, difficult situations on the field of play. What could have happened that would suddenly make it now such a problem that he feels he has to retire from the tour?
Well, it's a very difficult thing to really diagnose. I can't help but sort of smile at the irony. Currently, you're talking to a Canadian who lived in Australia and has only kept up on the Ashes by understanding that the Australians are actually battling back to actually win one for a change.
Right.
Having lived down under for a long period of time and then moved back to Canada, this is the first I've talked about cricket in at least 4 or 5 years. The issue, though, is that many of our top sportsmen and women can suffer from depression. And one of the major problems that we deal with is that we believe that if they're able to perform at a high level, whether they're an athlete or whether they're a performer, a singer, an actor, etc., we think that they must be mentally ready to go all the time, and they can be battling these demons.
Right.
And we've had a lot of athletes come out lately, essentially come out and say that they've battled their own mental demons, and this is only one more that's come out with it. And I guess the big problem is that it's one of the most debilitating diseases, if you will, in modern society, and we fail to understand how we can deal with it, let alone understand what it causes.
I mean, the difference, I suppose, for Jonathan Trott as well is that, unlike, say, a golfer or a tennis player or even a footballer to many extents, you're not necessarily facing this kind of, barrage of what we call sledging, this kind of constant, trying to find your weakest point and having a go at it. I mean, David Warner, the Australian player, has been accused of going too far. He said that he saw fear in his eyes and all this kind of thing. And he talked about how, this was a guy who was weak and he was poor. And before the Test series started, Darren Lehmann, who is the Australian coach, had said that what he hopes to see is an England player bursting into tears and having to go home. That's all starting to look a bit cruel now under the circumstances.
Well, it does, except that in reality, depression and sledging are hardly related. I mean, somebody who has made it to the top of their game the way Jonathan Trott has experienced sledging all the way along. Let's face it, he got there without it. The demons of depression are unrelated to sledging. The comments that are made on the field, they can handle that. It's the inner demons, and it's what he's dealt with for a long period of time. I really don't believe that what goes on and what's said on the field has likely exposed that problem. That problem has been there, and that athlete has dealt with it for a long period of time. The sledging sounds like an unhealthy or an unhappy consequence to what's going on. But in reality, if we treat a mental illness the same way we do a physical illness, if you pulled a hamstring or had a broken arm or something, the sledging wouldn't really affect that. And I don't imagine that the sledging has really been the cause here. It may have exacerbated it, but it's unlikely it's the cause. He's dealt with this for a long period of time.
Doc, is it fair to say that when you're crippled with a mental illness like this and you have to retire from a whole series, it's going to be a hell of a job to ask a man like that, despite his enormous talent, to come back and do it again?
Well, it's a tough one because generally in society we don't look at mental illness and we don't look at mental problems or mental challenges the way we do at coming back from a physical injury. That's no different in sport than it is in general society, and that's where he will have the biggest problem. The looks that he'll get and the comments that will be made in private and public about a mental illness are extremely different than that of a physical injury.
It's very, very difficult indeed. Dr. Kerry Mummery, thanks very much indeed. And I guess Andy Flower and others have been at pains to point out that it wasn't really anything to do with the sledging itself. But if you're David Warner right now, the Aussie, who's already been in trouble for picking a fight with Joe Root in a bar, I mean, he's clearly what you might call as a quintessential kind of macho Australian character. I mean, he's never going to change, is he?
Mike, you've described him perfectly. As a rather unpleasant individual, David Warner is. I don't know what it is about him, but every pore in his body seems to seep unpleasantness to me. You know what I mean?
There's a sort of snarling attitude about him.
Yeah, the snarling, and he takes sledging to beyond banter into personal nasty stuff. Now, what he said, I thought that Trott's innings was poor and weak. Yeah. Fair enough observation from one cricketer to another, except that the rest of the cricket community down there have said that was going over the top, disrespectful, another professional. Yeah. But then when he pushes on from there and starts questioning whether the guy's got it in him. You see, the doctor we've just had on started referring to it as a depressive illness, but if you're that stressed out at that crease and these balls are whizzing past, and you think one of these is going to hit me in the head in a minute because I just can't cope with all this, is that depression, or is it a point when the stress of the situation you're in means you're unable to keep going?
Well, I don't think we'll ever know. I think that's the trouble. You just can't.
We'll never know.
Really
but that
tell.
David Warner, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, if I was an Australian, I'd want somebody like Warner in my team to completely unsettle the opposition.
And Mitchell Johnson has been exactly that figure as well. I mean, his bowling has been tremendous. And I mean, you'd have to say, with all due respect to Jonathan Trott and with great hopes for his recovery, Australia have got mentally the upper hand now, haven't they?
Oh, massively the upper hand, because it's all very well us all being nice about it and saying, well, you know, the sledging had nothing to do and all that. But in fact, what they've done is...
They've bullied England, haven't they?
They've driven one of England's players out of the squad. I don't accept all these experts who I think are trying to protect the reputation of cricket, saying the sledging had nothing to do with it. I mean, the amount of stick Trott's taken, I was looking actually before I came to the show tonight, his first innings when he scored 9 runs, okay, and it was in 9 balls, wasn't it, or something like that. But I mean, you know, experts examined every single shot that he took and said any one of them could have been the shot that could have got him out. He's simply not on his game. Michael Vaughan is written in one of the papers tomorrow, I think it's the Telegraph or the Times, that, you know, it's a terrible situation. But only a few days ago, Michael Vaughan was actually criticising Trott and saying, you know, he really is having a bad time. Now he regrets saying that,
well,
of course.
because nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
And David Warner didn't know either, so it's not really very fair, I guess, to pick on him. Now, coming up, we've got lots more to talk about, because not only does Mike Porky Parry has apparently noticed that Jose Mourinho's decided to cut his own hair, he's got something to say about this crazy cut that he's won. I've tweeted it out, a picture of it. It is actual size next to a TalkSport mug, and it's just about the right size to put a reasonably large egg in. But he apparently claims he won it at the age of 6 for boxing.
Hang on, it's inscribed.
Yeah, I know.
It's inscribed.
Well, you could have inscribed it yourself.
Oh, rubbish. It says Michael Parry, boxing, Farley, 1961, and then on the plinth in white, it says what?
I can't read that.
The Buckling Cup.
The Buckling Cup. God save us. It's all coming up next on Talk Sport. This sounds like one of those versions of the Rocky theme tune that they would have played when you were 6 years old going into the ring.
Well, Rocky wasn't around in those days, a bit before his time. Rocky. But, I mean, you know, pugilism was something that I was very fond of when I was younger, but...
Well, how on earth did you become a boxer at the age of 6?
Because I was hard.
Yeah, but I mean, who'd you box at 6?
Well, he boxed my mother 6 years old.
Did your father teach you how to box or something?
Yeah, he did a bit, really. We want to look. We used to go to Butlins on holiday, which incidentally I used to get roundly mocked about at school because, of course, I went to a good school, Direct Grand Grammar, and a lot of the families went off to Mallorca. It was the early
posh kids.
Yes, that's right. Posh kids went to Mallorca. It was the early day of the package holiday. You know what I mean? And then they said, where are you going? I just used to say Yorkshire. Didn't say Butlins, because only...
You were ashamed?
Well, yeah, a little bit. Only sort of car workers from Vauxhalls and Ellesmere Port went to Butlins.
What's wrong with that?
Well, nothing at all.
You've always had this inherent snobbishness.
No.
Despite the fact that you've got quite humble roots, and you've done very well for yourself, considering the disadvantages in height and everything else that you've got. But at the end of the day, you know, you're actually ashamed of being working class, aren't you?
Not at all.
Yes, you are.
Not at all. Anyway, we got up to Butlins, and my dad said, oh, look, there's a boxing competition. We're getting to that. So...
That's nice of him. Yeah. What does your mother have to say?
Well, I don't know. I don't suppose she.
I mean, I just can't imagine. I mean, I've got a 6-year-old son now. I cannot imagine putting him into a boxing ring with anybody.
Well, my father probably didn't like me very much, but he put me into the ring. And anyway, this kid I was fighting, I remember him. He was a Welsh kid. He came from Wales.
Was he the same age as you?
Yeah, same age. Yeah, but he was bigger than me, and he had.
No surprise there.
He had what in those days we used to call a crew cut, which now you'd call a skinhead. You know what I mean, like suede head or something like that. And he was making fun of me, so I didn't like him much, so I beat him up. I really got stuck into him, you know, and I knocked him about. The fight was stopped.
Right.
I knocked him through the ropes. But years later, and then I won this cup. This is the cup that you've tweeted out on. So, folks, you want to see my cup, it's fine. My mother keeps this on her sideboard.
It's very, it could do with a bit of silver polish.
Well, that's because I've had possession of it for a couple of weeks.
It's a little tarnished.
My mum polishes it religiously. But years later, when I was 18, I was at the King's School Chester, which I keep telling you about, right? And the headmaster said, we've got to have a big drive for charity. And the bloke who really disliked me, a guy called Martin Hazel, right, he was about 6'5", even in those days.
Well, this was like a reunion or something.
No, it wasn't a reunion. I was 18. We were at school.
Oh, sorry, okay.
And we were in the sixth form then. You see what I mean? This guy had never liked me because I was better at football than he was, and I was in the football first 11, and he wasn't. And I was probably about 5'6" or 5'7" in those days. This guy was about 6'4". Came over and he said, "Oh, I've got a great idea, Parry. This is in the sixth form common room. You know, why don't we have a boxing match? You know, and sell tickets and raise money for charity?" What could I say? I said, "Okay." And I mean, I should have been beaten to a pulp, but I adopted what would now be called the Mike Tyson approach. Mike Tyson wasn't around in those days, obviously.
He certainly wasn't.
And I just, rolled myself into a ball, got underneath his long reach, and just beat hell out of his ribs.
Right.
And then when he was failed, I bang, hit him right in the middle of the face and knocked him over. We didn't have a ring, we had benches.
Sounds brutal.
I knocked him over the benches, and I became like school hero for the rest of the time I was there.
Right.
I was the Mike Tyson of the King's School Chester.
Well, I mean, at 18 I can understand it, but I'm more interested in the fight at 6. I mean, how long did that go? Was it 3 rounds, knockout?
I think it
win
was 3
by
2-minute
knockout?
rounds. I think it's 3 2-minute rounds.
That's tantamount of child abuse,
To memory. Well, I don't know. You probably wouldn't do it these days, but
Did you have a headgear on and everything?
No, didn't have any headgear.
No headgear?
No, just gloves.
So you were
gloves.
just smacking each other in the
Yeah,
face?
just literally didn't have a shirt on or anything. Just shorts, pumps, as we call them those days.
That is barbaric,
and,
isn't it?
well, I suppose they let it happen these days. But anyway, that's the way things were.
Yeah. So after all this talk of, the great trophies that you've got in your mother's cabinet, this is the best you can do. It's about 4 inches high, and that's with the plinth,
Well, you haven't got one.
I've got loads of cups.
Oh, yeah, what for?
Yeah, for golf, mostly.
Rubbish.
I won loads of golf tournaments when I used to be able to play, when I didn't work at night and I could actually go out during the day.
Absolutely. Well, you can get out the day now. Just make sure you come home early and come to work. Talking about golf courses, by the way, I was working across one today, and the leaf population this year has exceeded anything I've ever seen before.
Leaves fall from the trees.
Well, it's nearly winter, but what bugs me is when there's leaves about, all these clowns go out with these leaf blowers. No, I am not joking. I was walking down a path today, and I was behaving myself and minding my own business and taking in the autumn air on a walk on the North Downs, as I always do. Some jerk suddenly starts this leaf blower, and the noise of it is incredible.
It is very noisy, and also it's bad for the environment because they pump out all sorts of fumes, don't they?
Absolutely, but not only that, he hit a huge pile of leaves, and they shot up in the air like confetti, and then came down all over me. And I went after the guy and asked him what he thought he was playing at, because to me, I was assaulted by leaves.
Well, the problem with the leaf blowing idea is that they're supposed to be for people to clear, say, their driveway and put them into the road, where they're then supposed to be cleared up by the local council.
Rubbish.
But now, unfortunately, the local council have all got leaf blowers, and all they're doing is blowing the leaves from one place to another. What happened to picking them up and putting them in a bag?
I've seen neighbours fall out because one guy goes down his driveway, blows them all across the hedge into neighbour's garden. Yeah. This guy comes out, this leaf blower, blows them all back. A most ridiculous invention ever. Yeah. They shouldn't be a leaf blower, it should be a leaf sucker.
That would work better, wouldn't it?
They should suck the leaves up into a big bag, sort of a bit like Ghostbusters style, Ghostbusters style device, and then go and throw them away somewhere. I hate leaf blowers. They're maniacs.
Well, I actually
mad.
spent quite a lot of the time this weekend picking up leaves. You'll be pleased to know, because I got my kids to work in the garden. Because the leaves are all over the grass. And
Put your kids to work, do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, because it's good for them to do that. They just sit inside playing.
You pay them for this.
PlayStation. Well, give them a bit of pocket money. Yeah.
Bit of pocket money. Yeah.
And that's you've got to instill the work ethic into them.
Well,
otherwise,
I'm
they
not
just
against
sit around.
work ethic.
So, but there's so they had a shovel. I had a rake, but I actually broke the rake. Funnily enough, I had to go out and buy a new rake. Oh, because the rake in the house was a plastic rake.
Right.
And unfortunately, we've had this infestation of cats. Now, this is something that you might know a bit about.
What?
Cats keep coming into the garden and doing their business in the garden, which is the most disgraceful, horrible thing that you've ever suffered from.
Yeah.
Because once one cat does it, there's a woman across the street who's got about 10 cats.
Yeah.
And they're always now coming into the garden.
I know how you can stop that.
How?
Well, I know this sounds a bit crude and all that, but when it's dark at night and nobody can see, you have to walk around your own garden and urinate all around the edge.
I've tried all that.
Have you?
I've tried all that. It doesn't work.
Well, it's supposed to, isn't it?
Well, it's meant to.
Isn't human urine supposed to ward off cats?
The only thing that was suggested to me that
So you have been out in the middle of the night and been urinating all over your garden?
Yeah.
Well, that's nice, isn't
just
it?
Just to keep the cats away.
That's nice, isn't it?
Well, imagine my despair to now discover that it didn't work anyway. Yeah. The only other thing that somebody said to me...
Probably so much alcohol in your body, it's
I thought that would help.
The right content.
It was coming out as Merlot. No, but I mean, the other thing that somebody suggested to me is that if you get some lion droppings... apparently, if you put those down, that really scares them away.
They're popular in downtown Kent, aren't they?
Yeah, it's easy to get. Well, apparently you could go and get them from a zoo or something.
Really?
Yeah.
What would you go to a zoo for? So I could have some line droppings, please.
Oh, they'd say, well, have you got a problem with the cats? Well, that's apparently the best way to get rid of them. But anyway.
I think you've gone mad.
Anyway, the problem was that as I'm raking the leaves, right, and in fact, one of my sons did it first, and he said, oh, I've got some, cat poo on the end. I said, oh, God. So I started banging it on the fence to try and get it off. And the rake smashed. So I had to go and buy a new rake. You know how much a rake costs?
No.
The cheapest one they had.
No.
In a what could be described as a DIY shop. 14 quid.
A convenience store. No, not convenience store.
A DIY place.
A garden place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
14 quid.
That is quite... Actually, I thought you were going to tell me, because I would have laughed my head off, that you'd trod on the rake and it whipped up and smashed you in the face.
No, that's like a silent film thing.
That would have been funny.
No.
I'd have enjoyed that. But just smashing a plastic rake, to me, is not great entertainment for your kids. And let's face it, you're there to entertain them.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, we had a lot of leaf picking up to do. But I agree with you about the leaf blowers. And let's talk about Jose Mourinho, because there's a piece in, and you mentioned the crew cut that your boxing aficionado had.
Yeah.
Piece in the paper here today saying that he cut it himself.
Well, I saw him talking about it earlier, and he said he borrowed a hair cutter off Torres, because Torres has got very short hair now, hasn't he? And apparently does it ooh, crikey, sorry, no, knocked my headphones off there, just demonstrating. Apparently he does it himself. And,
well, I've always believed that Torres' performance was related to his hair, because remember when he used to have, the blonde
flowing locks
when he was a great player.
Yeah.
And as soon as he went and made it dark and short, he couldn't play anymore.
It's called the Samson effect,
isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
Anyway, so Jose said he borrowed it, and he said, and he did it in front of the mirror, and he said, I did it, it looks nice now, and not only is it good, but it's cheap, it's very cheap, Yeah,
like he needs to have a cheap haircut.
Well, considering it's about 10 million quid a year, and all that sort of stuff, but... what made me think about it, Mike, is that I get constant comments, constant references, constant inquiries from a lot of people, including, I think I have an obligation to tell you, some senior members of the management at Talk Sport about when you're going to tidy your hair up, because it looks so ridiculous for a man of your age.
Well, it does not, actually. I mean, my hair is not particularly long. It was long a while ago. I accept that. I didn't cut it for about a year and a half.
Going through your hippie phase.
And I decided I quite liked it long, right? But I now have it cut about once every 6 weeks. So actually, it stays...
every 6 weeks?
Well, how often do you get your hair cut?
Oh, I have it regularly done every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks?
Yes.
Does it still grow then?
Of course it still grows.
Not on the top. You haven't got any hair there at all.
Of course I have.
Well, I didn't. You want me to take a picture and tweet that out?
No, I don't want you to take a picture and tweet it out, because I've got a set of headphones on. That
I won't need to use the flash.
So it pushes your hair back.
It's the bit that's behind the headphones that's
No.
That's bald.
No, not at all, not at all. I've got full head of hair, and I'm quite proud of it, actually.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my hair was so orange that my mother said that people used to stop me in the streets and marvel at my hair, because it was the colour of bright sunshine.
Really?
Yeah,
This is the same mother that let you box at the age of 6.
You are my sunshine. You are my...
There's no need for that. I don't
think my mother had much choice.
Well, anyway, I'm never going to cut my own hair, if that's your question.
Okay, well, I wouldn't expect you to, because you make a mess of it, because you make a mess of...
Well, you can't cut your own hair.
A lot of the initiatives that you try to set out on in life.
Thank you very much. Now, I've got a question for you, because a lot of people also have asked me the question. The last time you were here, you were talking about this rather remarkable story about the Hilton and a cocktail bar and a woman that you were taking out that you couldn't afford to take out.
Oh,
yes.
You
were talking about the lottery winners and how, money doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
We never heard the end of that story.
What? The end of what story?
The story you said you took it to the Windows on the World, whatever it was called,
the
restaurant at the top of the Hilton.
Yeah, I did,
and you couldn't afford all the cocktails. And was it her parents step in or something?
Well, in the end, there was cultural differences between herself and myself, and
what sort of cultural differences?
Well, basically, we were of different faiths. And I don't think her parents were very keen. They saw me as a bit of rough.
Was she not a druid then?
No, she was actually of the Jewish faith, and I'm a Gentile, and
easy for you to say.
Yeah. And I don't think her parents were too keen on that. But the relationship got off to a very bad start, because I told you, didn't I, that she lived in a very big house.
Yeah.
On the Bishop's Avenue. This house was so big, right, that when I was trying to find it, and I had a beaten up old Vauxhall Viva in those days, those square ones.
Yeah, I remember.
It was quite smart, actually, because it was silver with a black plastic roof. you know the thing I mean?
Yeah, I know.
The sort of thing I mean, yeah.
It was like an imitation Cadillac.
Yeah, something like that.
Very
it
poor
wasn't
imitation.
actually that beaten up, to be honest, until this moment, because what happened is, I turned into what I thought was their road, but it wasn't their road, it was their driveway. And so I was motoring up there, about 30 miles an hour or something, looking to the right and left, trying to work out where the house was. And all of a sudden, there's this terrific bang, and I ran into the back of her father's Rolls-Royce Corniche.
Oh dear.
And if you can remember those days, a Corniche was an open-top car.
Yeah, with 2 doors.
With 2 doors, and, I mean, an extremely expensive car. And needless to say...
I suppose the Vauxhall didn't just become a heap on the floor.
well, it didn't. It just dented the front of it. Must have seen it at the last moment and braked. But that didn't get it off to a good start. And after that, it was all downhill. And eventually...
You made your excuses and left, I suppose.
Well, no, it went on for about 12 months or something like that, you know. But in the end, the cultural differences meant there'll be it. But a lovely girl, and can't say anything wrong about her or her family. Very nice to have been associated with her.
Now, just before I let you go, the more trouble down at Portsmouth, your second adopted hometown. They've got a new manager to find.
Guy Whittingham's gone. New manager Martin Allen might be in the running.
Is that right?
You know, Mad Dog.
Mad Dog Martin. Well, he's a big friend of Talk Sports, of course.
Of course, he's a big friend of Talk Sports, and I'm absolutely certain.
Gillingham haven't exactly gone from strength to strength since he left.
Well, that's absolutely true, and I'm absolutely sure we'll be talking tomorrow at some stage as a big contender. He could get down there and do a job, but once again, Portsmouth, the city, the greatest naval port in the world at the height of the British Empire, is suffering again from mismanagement, and I'm furious about it. It's a great city, and it's been downtrodden.
Calm down, we'll have to talk some more about that on Thursday. Mike Porky Parry will be back, of course, for his second session with us on Thursday night. Don't miss that. Meanwhile, you can catch us on iTunes, the Two Mikes podcast that will be available in a few hours from now. And if you haven't seen it yet, go and have a look at his little cup that he won when he was 6 years old, because you'll have quite a good laugh. It's on Twitter at TS Extra Time.